The Oregonian newspaper ordered this clock for installation in their new building, which was erected in 1892. If you wanted the best, you bought it from the E. Howard Clock and Watch Company. That's how you wind the clock. List price in 1892 was $1,845, and that did not include those 4 12-foot glass faces and hands. The Oregonian moved to new quarters in 1948. So for 2 years, the clock was not running. The owner of the building, who was going to demolish it, was going to scrap the clock for metal. And I actually think the most interesting character in all of this was a gentleman by the name of Oscar Borg. He was a jeweler, watchmaker, optometrist. He knew a professor of mechanical engineering at Oregon State College at the time. Dr. Graff was his name. And he happened to mention that the clock was going to be scrapped and destroyed. Dr. Graff apparently knew an editor, an assistant editor of the Oregonian, and was able through that connection to purchase the clock, $200 or $300, something like that at the time. There's 4 places on each side where there were 4 big faces, so a big rod came off in 4 directions to each of those big faces that had the hands on it. Dr. Graff had this idea that he was going to use the clock as a demonstration of how power is transmitted through gears for his engineering students, mechanical engineering students. The story gets a little sketchy, but it appears that maybe he retired, and when he retired, he took it with him, and it was in his garage for a while. And in his will, upon his death, it was donated to OMSI. And it arrived at the old OMSI building, Forest Park, around 1957. Our association, the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors, we're a local chapter. It was contacted in 1997 by OMSI to restore the clock. Over 1,700 hours of time was spent by our members. There were like 30 volunteers who completely disassembled the clock, which is in a state of disrepair and age, rust, corrosion, completely took it apart. So after a year, it was done, and it was brought over from the old OMSI building to the new OMSI building and put into the turbine room up on the mezzanine.
Where it was ticking ever since.
Ever since. One part that's not on there is this little device, and it sits with this fork over these teeth, and it rocks back and forth. And in any clock, when you hear it ticking, you're hearing the teeth on that gear hit these metal prongs. Tick, 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 tick. After 60 years, they decided it was time to retire it as a display here. OMSI is willing to allow it to be displayed in an appropriate venue indefinitely. So we're trying to locate another appropriate venue.
What would be, do you think, a suitable kind
Ideal?
of location? Yeah. Like
another tower.